Playing with my eyebrow on the intro to that. Trying to see if I can do both eyebrows. Nope. I'm less practiced with doing it this way. I can do this one well. Not trained that one very well. Goofy thing to be doing with my time, but okay. Yeah, I think I missed last night, so we doubling up tonight? I have no idea. So we did paintings, pixels, what day is today? What day was today? Today was Thursday, right? So we should be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 4 days into this. We skipped yesterday. So 3 days into this. So we did no camera, low camera for video. And we did pixel and paint for art. That leaves us with channel music and sound effects, audio game and remixed old style songs for music, and then the homage video that I was getting ready to do. The videos I have, again, homage video, and then the 3 sketch videos that I was working on, and the horror short that I was working on. So let's just bite the bullet and jump on board the horror short that I was working on. That one was meant to be an animated thing that was sort of a reworking of a script that I had, a reworking of a short story that I wrote years ago. If I remember correctly, the original premise was, sure, let's make a horror animated short. And I came up with a horribly shocking short idea. And I scripted it out in a night. And it was an amazing script about a school shooting. And I can't do that. I can't make that. It's disgusting, and I don't want to expose other people to that. So I can't do that, which I guess shows I really shouldn't be making horror stuff, because it's a little bit brutal for me. And I don't have the gall to make something like a tragedy like that into a chunk of art. It's distasteful for me. So I immediately, like on the third day, I came up with the idea of the project. The second day, I came up with the script for what I was doing. And the third day, I said, I can't do that. I need to restart this process. And so I think it was like the third or fourth day where I hatched onto what I was going to do for the idea that I was going to do, which was revamp an old script. And yeah, so I think we were most of the way through the week when I even started the project. And so switching over to a animated short movie about, and I guess moderate spoilers, I don't know. I guess the basic premise that I should outline was that it was a story about an author who had just finished writing an important part of a story in which fictional characters are killed, are victims of a killer. And the author leaves the writing process to go make something to eat or something and hears voices. And the more they try to figure out what's going on, the more they start to realize that the voices, he's being haunted by the characters from his story. There are ghosts of the people he killed for his story. And so it's people on some distant planet that doesn't exist that he made up for the purposes of killing them. And he's being haunted by these characters who plague him with questions about, like, I had a life. I had things that I could have done. Why did you kill me? And so he's haunted by this and immediately ends up fleeing from the haunting. And, well, it wouldn't be as important a story if, say, the character ended up in a psych ward or waking up the next morning free from those spirits, realizing in the light of day that they're fictional characters. He has to kind of die. So that was sort of I wrote a short story years ago for a thing I was doing where I did a short story every day for a month. And that was one of the short stories of a character who wrote a story, killed a little child character, and was haunted by that child character to the point where they fled out into the woods and died of exposure. I just sort of was revamping that story idea for an animated video that I wanted to try to do. The animation process was more difficult than I was prepared to handle, and that's like I would say weeks, if not months, worth of work to achieve that animation. And so as we went further into the year, I kind of came to the conclusion that it probably makes more sense for me to do it as a live action acting, so I could play the author and I could make the voices of the characters that are haunting that character. And yeah, I think that would probably work better. It would get the product made at least. I think the animation's just too big a hurdle to get past. I think I'm going to stick to one of each of these tonight. I had Saturday as sort of a summary day. I think I'll just make that the second. I'll make it the makeup day for what I missed yesterday. So that horror short, I think is still on the table as something I would potentially want to do. I don't know that it'll be great, but it'll be fun to do. Let's just see if I could get a little bit of that directing and photography and that kind of stuff into the process so that it's, a real experiment in seeing what I can achieve with a camera, even a limited camera in my case, to achieve the video that I wanted to make. And I guess that brings us to, I guess the first week that I did an audio project for this channel was trying to come up with music for my channels, as well as, and that was the music for the channel was really more of a very simple set of chords. And if I remember correctly, it was meant to be two parts. There would be a key section from each that would be like the 5-second jingle for the channel at the beginning, but also an extended extension on either side of that could be looped for background music. Now, for the Roving Jack channel, the best option, I think, for that one was going to be something along the lines of reworking some of the old versions of the Roving Jack of Many Trades song. There's Irish versions, English versions, all across the UK. They had different versions of this song. The one I most know is it's interesting because I always loved the tune before I even really took in what was being sung. The Irish version I heard first has the main character, Jack of all trades, is sort of like a drifting from one thing to another work-wise. And it's like one of the lines is that he sold, I sold old furniture with furniture with fleas and bugs, I sold it. So it's basically bug infected furniture that he's reselling to a new buyer. And so the character of that song is maybe not the most honest or trustworthy, but there are other versions of the song throughout history where the character is legitimately just somebody with multiple trades under their belt, a clockmaker, things like that. It's not a faker. He's not a con artist. He's not a swindler. And that's sort of always the mentality I've had. The song is about a roving jack of many trades of every trade. If you wish to know my name, they call me Jack of all trades. And so I dug through some of the different versions of it and pulled out some actual skill sets. And there's a massive list. Like if you did them all, it would be an epically long song. But what I wanted to do was maybe give that song a reworking, the one that I knew with the con artists, swap out the con artistry tricks for the legitimate jobs of other versions of that song, but maintain the rhythm, beat, and poppy nature of it, and pull it a little bit out of the Irish folk music genre, and pull it a little bit more into a more modern feel, and use that as sort of the basis for the channel theme song. Now, for this channel, I didn't have a set theme song, I don't think, that I was going to really work with. It was really just a little bit more about getting an opener song sound for 5 seconds and a looping track that is playable and workable as an upbeat background music for working on projects. So like this wouldn't just be me talking to a camera. I could have low key in the background, a little bit of mood music that's meant to inspire and encourage. And I want people to work on projects and share them with me. I need to have a set of music that's not going to be dead noise, nothing going on in the background. But I also need it to not be, intense or, what is it, techno, beady kind of like frantic stuff. I want it to be like, anyway, that was the idea for the music for my channels that I was working on. Now, what I ended up about halfway through the first week of working on that audio project, what we ended up talking about was sound effects and audio effects. Now, at the time, it was just sort of getting used to playing with sound. Part of what I was thinking of doing was, with the inspired content song especially, using like the sound of dripping water to get different notes, or using a craft hammer working on a project to give me the beat. And so you would take these things and use them as individual notes, plug them into a song with a simple set of chords, and make music out of crafting or tinkering or projects. And that started the journey into capturing different sounds. And that journey of picking different sounds from my environment also ended up inspiring all sorts of like fascination with taking sounds and tweaking them, taking the bubble wrap and making the explosion sound. And then I just got thinking like, I love this process of finding sounds, capturing them, altering them, and making new things out of them. It's sort of like the old joke of the Monty Python's Holy Grail. Um, the coconuts are the sound of horses' hooves. And, finding other things that I can make sounds that I can repurpose in other things. At the time, I think we talked about the idea of reshooting the Star Wars prequels in a way that let me tell the story in a new way that had a totally different twist on the stories. And being able to do the acting of each of the characters with makeup and stuff like that for myself, while also doing the voices and sound effects especially. And that's where that sort of led into, like, I know I could do my videos or my skit comedy stories that I'll talk about probably tomorrow. Do those with sound effects for them. And the sound effects for those I could make. So the sound of breaking glass, where I could be talking about something and just say, like, so I was going to do this, crash, but that's not going to work anymore. Or, sewing in some simple sound effects to add a feel to, like, the big one everybody knows is a record in the midst of being played, scratching across the surface. That sound of things coming to a stop, like being able to do a video where I do a talk to the camera like this, and then have sort of like background music playing that's just very subtly there. But then when I'm, wait a minute, and just record scratch and stop all background music adds atmosphere and a sense of action in the video, even when there's not action. And so playing more with those sounds, I'm like, what other sounds could we add to that? And so I started building a list, and I built a nice list of different sound effects that I could throw into video projects. Now, what I'm thinking about more now is when we came up with the idea of doing the audio games, being able to sew in atmosphere. If we're in a space station, do we have a sound for the engine of the space station running in the background? The power plant? That thrum? When you think about Star Trek The Next Generation or Star Trek Deep Space Nine, there are these persistent background noises that lend the sense that you're not on a cardboard set with people with costumes, but lend an existing world beyond what you can see. It's just out on the edge because you have the sounds of a whole other large location going on. And so being able to use sound effects to flesh out a larger world for audio adventures, I think could be one of the potential uses for this project that I've come up with since then. Also have even simple things like doing one of the quiz videos. If you make this choice, go here, make this choice, go here, having that, timer, tick, 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 or when you make a choice, have a success fanfare or a failure sound. Adding sound effects to each of these kinds of videos makes them more than just a weird visual or audio a project. It gives it a finished quality that I want to explore working on a little bit more. And, revisiting some of these topics reminds me of things that I talked about before. So one of the things that when we were talking about reshooting the Star Wars, like coming back to review what I was working on for this has brought that interest back for me. So I keep looking at my scripts for what I was doing for that, and I keep thinking like, oh, I really want to get back to doing that because I have some really good ideas for that, and I really want to play with it some more. And it's hard because I'm doing these videos, I'm doing my reactions to Black Mirror, and the candy cane taste tests, and working my jobs, and so I come home and I have a little sliver of time before I go to bed, and I end up spending 3 times as much time as I have at bedtime doing some of this stuff, exploring some of this, scripting and working on parts for the project. And I'm not getting enough sleep. You can probably start to see it. It's starting to wear on me a little bit. I'm exhausted all the time. But I'm so into playing with these things, and I really shouldn't be playing with the rescripted Star Wars stuff right now because I just don't have the time. It's not a priority, and it's not going to happen anytime soon. So I need to be focusing on the smaller things first. But building that library of sound effects and finding interesting ways to use them, that can be a major part of what I'm doing over the next, few months. Because as I'll talk about, I think probably tomorrow with the sketch comedy, well, I don't know that I want to even call it that. The sketch videos, the stories I wanted to share that are sort of funny from my past. Being able to provide a few simple sound effects for it while giving the experience of doing some storytelling with video, being able to add the audio quality or audio effects to it. That's something I can do. It's not a reshoot a whole movie thing. Whereas I think the thing we'll talk about tomorrow is going to be the audio games. The project I worked on for some of those audio games, having the ability to do some of the audio effects that I'm talking about right now, also augment those games. So that's sort of the recap of those things. And again, it feels like, well, I mean, I want to say the horror short that I talked about and the channel songs have both been no-shows. I haven't brought them to completion yet. So I feel a little bad about that, but they're not dead. They're not dead in the water. They're just, I have to get over my acting anxiety to do the horror short and just do it. Because I'm the only person who needs to be in that one. All it requires is me adjusting for what sets I have available. So it's going to be the kitchen and maybe one of these rooms around here that I can temporarily set up and just do the wall behind me in a way that being able to set up a set that I could use for some of the scenes, and then there's some outdoor shots for that. And I think that's just the hard part for me, is it's going to be a couple days worth of shooting video with me acting scenes to a camera that there's nobody in front behind. So it's just going to feel weird. I'm going to have to get over it and just give it a try. Did I ever consider adding sound to the comic, the Goober Nice to Meet You? Sound effects to comics, I feel like I read some comic. My mom, love her for her attempt to be into my interests when I was younger. I got some mini CDs that had Marvel comics that you click on the panels and they're narrated and character voice acted, and there's like a flash animation for the panel or something like that, like a pop-up version of the panels, and you had the voice acting. And it's a neat gimmick, but I feel like in a lot of ways it's like a lot of those other gimmicks that didn't really take off because it was unnecessary. Nobody was interested in that. So adding audio to existing comics, or making a gimmick comic where audio is a factor, is not high on my priority list. Now, taking still images and basically flashing them like a slideshow and adding the narration and audio effects to the background is essentially what you see some YouTube animators do. They'll have a character do this, and it's narration over top of it, and then the character goes like this, and narration over top of it. It's simplified animation, and that's one thing. It's definitely one way I could do, like when I was talking previously about doing the zero camera or low camera video production, where I could use this to do still images of me in different poses and narrate over top of it if I didn't have a video camera to do that. Or I could do even drawn images. There was a YouTuber called Grade A Under A who used to do these snarky, punchy, somewhat comedic takedown pieces, like, you know what really bothers me kind of posts. And his posts are almost exclusively clips of the thing he's talking about, interspersed with something I think he did in like MS Paint, where he did a face with a underbite and a face with an overbite kind of face. And they're just two stick figures with P's for head, with a large lower jaw or a large upper jaw. And they're standing right next to each other. And occasionally he'll zoom on the faces and put angry eyebrows on or surprised eyebrows on. And that's the only thing he has for things, is pictures of the topic he's talking about. So if he's talking about like YouTubers, he'll have clips from other YouTube videos and complaining about how this person does this kind of garbage. And then he'll go back to his MS Paint 2 images and use them to express faces, like smiley faces. And it's almost like he's reading essays, or he's scripting out an essay about a topic. And in his essay, he's using emojis. But his emojis are his 2 MS Paint pictures with different expressions on their faces. And that's something that, you know, I think I've talked about a little bit, of doing simple stuff like that. There's probably a way to do a narrated web comic. That's weird. It's an interesting question, because I maybe don't want to add or create new projects right now to jump in the midst of, but you're probably going to stir me into that direction with this question, because now my brain's instantly saying, like, we were talking about whether or not we had introduced any, what was it? If we had ever done any computer elements to board games. And that's ultimately what led me to playing around with the interactive audio games. And there's a question in my mind, is there a way we could, you know, the aspect of those interactive audio games is it's a playable game for the visually impaired. They don't have to see the screen to do an interactive game on a computer. And so by the same token, I feel like there's the possibility that we could do a web comic for the visually impaired, or something like that. And so again, it would be sound effects and audio effects are going to be your primary sensory input. And so you could sort of set the stage for each panel with sound. Could we do it? Yeah, I'm sure we could. And maybe it's something to delve back into, and I'll make a note of it. Audio and sound effects for a comic or webcomic theme. Like, there's something there, and it's something different than what those old Marvel comics that my mom got me on CD did. And it's not as much of a gimmick as it is a potential different way to experience the comic environment. I mean, the old see, you got me stuck on it now. My brain's sticking to it like glue. There are a lot of those old style comics where you have two characters sitting at a table making comments at each other. And it's like panel 1 is the setup. Panel 2 is the prep for the punchline, and panel 3 is the punchline. And like, all you need to pull that off is two voice actors playing two characters having those same dialogue points. And if you set them, I bet you, if you set them up on a display, left side, right side, middle of the screen, that you have the same ability for the reader to hop back to read the first panel again. Panel by panel, voice acted, partially narrated comics. It's not a bad idea. You have to script it right, though. That's going to be the trick. You helped me invent a new product. Now the question is, where are we going to put that into a project to make? I guess it's going to be happening in this next year. Web comics for we'll just say blind, because non-visual web comics. And the thing is, the 3-panel layout, left, right, and middle, you can put them on smart devices like this. All you'd have to do is have somebody who's going to be, left side, right side, middle of the screen. And instead of doing visual gags like you would in some web comics, they can be auditory gags. They could be like jokes with punchline. Yeah, you could definitely do the old audio radio stories. Those are a little more long-term narrative, and maybe that would be something you could do too. Something a little more serious. Trying to think, like, there's a world of that kind of thing to do, but the interactivity of being able to move from panel to panel like you could in a comic book, man, that would be interesting. It may have to, well, it wouldn't pull in as many of the aspects of the choose your own adventure stuff, but you'd have to be able to let the pacing of the story development work with the interactivity of scrolling on the screen, or in the case of the scroll pad for a visually impaired reader. So could we do superhero stories? I bet you we could. It's less interactive than choose your own adventure. So in many ways, there's a more simplistic aspect of it. It wouldn't require the left or right audio channels experiment for the choose your own adventure stuff. It'd be much more streamlined to be able to do it, but to do it well, to be able to do the whole background audio of a. It'd be like getting together with some people I know who do movie productions, and like, who's your Foley artist? Who's the person who does all the sound effects, the voice acting, the ambient sounds, the music, syncing all that right and setting it up not as a next week and the thrilling adventures of, like, not like the old radio shows, but full on, like, imagining you're in that world with blinders on so that you can hear what's going on around you, and designing the story and the sequence of events to specifically be for somebody who's not going to be able to see the environment. So a game where, like, the character, I don't know that you want it to be in the first person where I did this, I did that, or in the second person, in most cases, it would be like you're sitting at the docks and somebody approaches you from behind, and then play audio of somebody approaching you from behind. You could do that. You don't have to do it that way. You'll notice in a lot of comic books or visual medium stories, they're never from the perspective of a person watching events. It's always from a third person outsider view of watching events happen. It's a very cinematic approach to it. And the closest equivalent to a cinematic approach to a comic or something like it would have to be still in that third person approach. The story would be sort of like a God's ear view of the story unfolding, rather than some non-existent being seeing events. But I mean, you could also do that sort of second person storytelling where you were sitting in the bar when she walked up, kind of thing. You can still do that. I don't know. It's an interesting approach. I feel like those are harder to write because it's a second person is easier done in Choose Your Own Adventure than it is done as a linear narrative. But maybe that's the right thing to do. I guess we'd have to do some experiments to see what makes the most sense for people. Because if you're doing something where the sensory experience is all you got, the audio experience is all you've got for the storytelling, perhaps you have to invent a character to carry that story element. I don't know. I'll have to think about that. And maybe what we'll end up doing when we try that out is to do a first, second, and third person version of each audio story. And not do like radio plays. Radio plays are all right. They're still sort of narrated stories. And I feel like instead of doing a straight narrated story, it's sort of like it would be more interesting to do a story as almost like a movie where the lights are out, if that makes any sense. Actor 1 and Actor 2 interacting with each other on screen without having to narrate over the top of it and tell you he took a mighty punch to the chest, and like not having to do that not having to narrate it, but just tell it as if you're experiencing it without visuals. There should be a way to be able to do that. It may require setting up a very distinctly specific type of story that's suited to that type of telling. Daredevil would be a good character to start with. Yeah, I don't mind doing new projects. I think it would be fun. And honestly, the thing about creating some of these project ideas is I'm probably not going to get it perfectly right when I do it. I don't have to. I can get the idea out there, and other people can look at them and go like, that's actually an interesting idea, but he should have done this. Then do it. I want everybody making things like these. That's the goal, is like, when I do my audio adventures, I want somebody to say like, oh, I wish I could do something like that. Like, then do it. Like, I don't want to be the only one making them. And I want to end up, at some point, I'll probably end up making a video detailing the steps of the process that I do to show people how to do what I did, and let them come up with their creative ideas of what stories to tell or how to do something a little bit different that I wasn't able to achieve because I didn't think of this trick that they're going to use to make it work right. I want to see what people create with these ideas. And it'd be great if I got credit for coming up with ideas and creating the first version of a thing, but I don't care if it's not even that I don't care. It's I actively want other people to steal these ideas and go forward with them. I'd appreciate a little bit of saying like, this is what he did. I'm going to do this a little bit differently and make it my own. I'd love a little bit of that, acknowledgement that that's what they're doing. But even if they don't, I don't care. I make things that I want to see exist in the world because I want them to exist in the world, not because I want to be the one who's famous for doing it. Fame scares the crap out of me. I don't want anything to do with fame. But I do want to see a lot of these projects come into being. I don't know that I always have the energy or the time as I would like, but we'll give it a shot. We're actually running longer than I thought we would tonight. So I'm going to hop out of here and finish up for tonight. And then I think I'm going to actually do a live react to the Black Mirror Interactive Bandersnatch, which I think is another hour and a half of video. We'll see where that goes. But that's it for tonight. I will be back tomorrow, hopefully, to discuss what was it I was before I derailed my brain there. We were going to discuss the audio adventures and the sketch, the video sketches that I was going to do. So I will catch you tomorrow. Thanks for participating. I love the input, and even when it adds a new projects to the pile of ideas to get to, I actually love getting inspired for new projects. So keep inspiring content. I will catch you tomorrow. Take care, and good night. And if you want to give these video ideas too, with your new camera or anything like that, feel free to. And if you make them, let me know. I'd love to see what you make. It's okay to do a rough version too. That's what I got to keep telling myself. It's okay to do a rough version and not get it perfect. It's not about being perfect. It's about telling a story and sharing it. Alrighty. Take care. Good night. Oh, come on. Why? Why are these buttons not acknowledging me? There we go.